Every gift I got ended up with my sister, until I gave her one that was completely empty. My name is Rachel, I'm 33 now and living in Washington, D.C., where I work in international logistics. But this story starts when I was 9 years old, long before any of that. It was Christmas morning, and snow had fallen overnight, so everything outside looked like it came from a snow globe. We were at my grandmother's house in Vermont, which always smelled like cinnamon and fresh pine that time of year. I remember being really excited because my grandmother had hinted the night before that she got me something extra special. When it came time to open presents, I waited my turn. That's how things were in our family. Linda, my mom, made sure we all opened gifts one at a time so everyone could watch and comment. It was supposed to make things feel more cherished, but looking back, I think it just gave her more control over the moment. Finally, my grandmother handed me a little box wrapped in shiny pink paper with a silver bow. I tore into it, heart pounding with excitement. Inside was the cutest pink camera I'd ever seen, one of those chunky plastic ones with cartoon animal stickers already on it and a roll of film ready to go. It even had my name written on a tag inside the box. To Rachel, with love from Grandma. I was thrilled. I loved taking pictures. At school I'd borrow the class camera whenever I could just to take blurry shots of the playground or my art projects, so having my very own camera felt like magic. I remember holding it in my hands, already imagining all the pictures I was going to take. My friends, my room, maybe even making a scrapbook. I thanked Grandma and hugged her tight. She whispered in my ear, "It's just for you, sweetheart. I saw it and knew you'd love it." But then came the voice that still echoes in my head. "Rachel, give that to your sister." I turned around and there was my mom, Linda, standing behind me with that smile that looked warm if you didn't know her. I froze, thinking maybe I'd misheard her. "What?" I asked. "Give it to Sophie," she repeated, already reaching toward me like the decision had been made hours ago. "She's younger, and it's more her kind of toy. You'll break it anyway." Sophie was 5 at the time. A sweet kid, sure, but she had this way of getting whatever she wanted. She'd pout, cry, or just wander into a room and suddenly everything revolved around her. My mom called it, taking care of the baby. I always called it what it really was, spoiling. I looked at Grandma, hoping she'd step in. But she just looked down at her hands, her face suddenly unreadable. I remember my fingers tightening around the camera, not out of defiance, but because I didn't understand. I had done nothing wrong. This was my gift, with my name on it. Why did Sophie get it? "She's too young for it," I said quietly, hoping reason would win. "She's your sister," Mom replied. "Don't be selfish. You've had enough gifts today." I hadn't, actually. I'd gotten a scarf, a couple of books, and now this. Sophie had already ripped through her stack of boxes, squealing every 5 seconds. But none of that mattered. I handed it over. Just like that. Sophie barely even looked at me. She just started pushing buttons and peeling off the stickers. And I just sat there, silent. That's the part that stuck with me more than anything. Not the loss of the camera, but how invisible I suddenly felt. Like my excitement didn't matter, like my joy was something my mom could take away the second it didn't fit her plan. After that, the day went on. People talked, laughed, and ate the big dinner. I don't remember what we had that night, or what games the kids played, or even what movie we watched later. I just remember sitting by the window with a paper plate in my lap, watching Sophie take blurry pictures of her fingers and the dog, and wondering why my mother didn't want me to have that one thing. It wasn't just a camera. It was the first time I really felt that my wants, my feelings, my existence, were somehow negotiable. That was the beginning. After that Christmas when I was 9, something shifted for good. That pink camera incident wasn't some isolated misunderstanding, it was the start of a pattern that followed me through the rest of my childhood. Every holiday, every birthday, it was the same thing over and over. No matter what gift I received, if it was nice, if it had any real value, it somehow ended up in Sophie's room by the end of the week. I remember my 10th birthday clearly. My aunt had mailed me a small box from California, and when I opened it, there was this beautiful purple smartwatch inside. It had a bright screen, a rubber strap with glitter embedded in it, and it could track steps, set alarms, and even play a few games. I was stunned. I'd never had anything that high-tech before. My aunt had included a note that said, "Hope this helps you keep track of all your big plans, love you always." I wore it all evening. I was careful with it, adjusting the strap to fit my wrist just right. I kept glancing down at the screen, setting timers for imaginary tasks, just to see it light up. I even wore it to bed that night, despite my mom's usual rule about not sleeping with electronics. The next morning, it was gone. I turned my room inside out looking for it. It didn't make sense, I'd fallen asleep with it on. I walked into the kitchen still half asleep, and there was Sophie, sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal, proudly showing off the smartwatch to our dad. "Mom said I could have it," she said when I asked what was going on. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. My mom, who was standing by the sink washing dishes, barely looked at me. "You weren't using it," she said flatly. "I wore it all night," I replied. "Sophie appreciates it more," she added, like that was a reasonable explanation. "She's been asking for one all year." "You didn't even thank your aunt properly." That wasn't true. I had written the thank you card before I even went to bed. I just stood there, speechless. What was I supposed to say? That I wanted my gift back? That I didn't want to keep losing everything I liked? It didn't matter. The decision was already made. That became the normal rhythm of things in our house. Christmas, birthdays, even the occasional just because, surprise. If the gift was expensive, trendy, or exciting, it would end up with Sophie. Designer jackets, wireless earbuds, a Kindle, a brand new iPad mini when she was only 10. I got socks, a notebook, once, a set of coloring pencils, when I hadn't drawn anything in years. At 13, I got a leather purse from my godmother. It was real leather, sleek and minimalist, something she said would make me feel grown up. I didn't even get a chance to unzip it. It was gone the next day. "Rachel doesn't even carry purses," Mom said when I found it hanging in Sophie's closet. I did carry purses. Just not ones I wanted to show anyone because they were usually hand-me-downs or clearance bin finds. But that didn't matter. My things weren't mine. The worst part wasn't losing the gifts, it was how casual my mom made it all seem. Like I was just being difficult every time I pointed out what was happening. "Don't be dramatic. You have other things. She's younger, let her enjoy it. She takes care of it better than you would." Sometimes I'd find the item broken weeks later. The smartwatch with a cracked screen. The Kindle forgotten in the back seat of the car with juice spilled across the cover. But nothing changed. I was always the one being unreasonable. My dad barely said anything. He wasn't home much anyway, always working, always tired. And when I brought it up once when he was around, he just muttered, "Talk to your mother." And that was it. By the time I was 14, I stopped expecting anything. I smiled when I was supposed to. I said thank you even when I knew the gift wouldn't be mine for long. I opened boxes with practiced detachment. New headphones? Cute boots? A ring light? Just wait, it'll be Sophie's by tomorrow. And every time, Mom would have an excuse ready. "You didn't even open the manual. She's been working hard at school. You're older. You should understand." I understood, all right. I understood that in our house, the valuable things didn't belong to me, not even when they had my name on the box. I moved out of the house when I was 21. It wasn't some dramatic exit, no screaming match or suitcase slammed in the hallway. I had just finished college and landed an entry-level job in international logistics. I found a tiny apartment in DC with creaky floors and walls thin enough to hear my neighbor's cat sneeze. But it was mine. For the first time, I thought maybe things would change. That distance would fix something. That maybe, now that I wasn't under her roof, my mother would start seeing me as my own person. But the pattern didn't stop. It just got quieter. More subtle. More frustrating. Every birthday, every holiday, relatives would still send gifts to my parents' house, especially the older ones who hadn't updated their address books. Sometimes they'd text me and say, "Hope you enjoy the earrings." Or, "Let me know how the skincare set works for you." I'd respond politely, "Thank you so much. I'll let you know when I get it." But the gifts never made it to me. At first, I thought maybe they got lost in the shuffle. Maybe my mom forgot to forward them. Maybe she assumed I'd be home for the weekend and just left them in the closet. But then Sophie started posting pictures. There she was on Instagram, wearing the silver hoops my aunt from Boston had mentioned in her card. The same card that never showed up. A few weeks later, it was the expensive tote bag my godmother had shipped from New York. Sophie had it slung over her shoulder in a mirror selfie with the caption, "Feeling cute, #blessed." I recognized every item. Not because they were mine, but because they were meant for me. When I asked my mom about it, calmly, through a short message, I didn't accuse anyone. I just asked if any packages had arrived for me that maybe got mixed up. Her reply came hours later. "If you're going to get hung up on things, Rachel, maybe you should take a hard look at your priorities." That was her favorite angle now. Materialism. Any time I brought up the fact that my gifts were going missing or mysteriously being used by my younger sister, it became a moral failing on my part. I was shallow. I was greedy. I cared too much about stuff. She said it like I was some spoiled brat throwing a tantrum because someone touched my toys. Once, during a family call on Easter, I mentioned casually that I hadn't received the book set Grandma had said she sent me. Sophie, who was lounging on the couch behind Mom, laughed and said, "Oh, those? I borrowed them. You don't even like that author." I stared at the screen. My mom just smiled like it was funny. "You girls should learn to share," she said. Share. As if I'd been offered any kind of choice. It didn't matter how far I moved or how rarely I came home. I was still the invisible one. The one whose things didn't really belong to her. The one who was always expected to understand, to give, to let go without asking questions. When I pressed a little harder about a missing bracelet that had been handmade and mailed by a friend overseas, my mom sent me a paragraph-long text. "You've changed. You never used to be this obsessed with possessions. Maybe it's the city life or your job, but you've become so cold." Sophie appreciates the little things. She's not attached to labels. She doesn't measure her worth in jewelry and bags. I stared at that message for a long time. It wasn't about the bracelet, or the earrings, or the tote. It was about how easy it was for her to rewrite the story, to turn me into the villain for even noticing what was happening. This wasn't screaming or slamming doors. It wasn't dramatic or obvious. It was subtle, systemic. Years of being told that what I had wasn't really mine, that my preferences didn't matter, that my things were optional, transferable, disposable, and ultimately better suited for someone else. Someone more grateful. Someone more in tune. Someone more like Sophie. I stopped asking after that. I let the gifts go. But every time Sophie posted a picture wearing a jacket I never received or holding a skincare set I never opened, I felt that old, familiar tug in my chest. Like I was watching a version of my life being lived by someone else, and being told that I should be okay with it. I hadn't planned it for long. It honestly came together in a single afternoon, right after I saw Sophie post a story wearing a silk scarf I recognized immediately. My godmother had sent it to me from Paris. She'd mentioned it in an email, said she saw it in a boutique and thought of me. It was one of those things I never even got to touch, never made it past the front porch. But there it was, draped around Sophie's neck with a caption that read, "Parisian Vibes #thankful." I sat at my desk staring at the screen, the image of her smile burned into my brain. And that's when the idea came to me. That Christmas, I went all out. I bought the most beautiful gift box I could find, thick velvet finish in emerald green, gold trim along the edges, tied with an ivory satin ribbon that caught the light. It looked expensive because it was. I filled it with nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just a small folded card placed right in the center. On the tag I wrote, "To Sophie. Karma." Inside the card I wrote just one sentence, "You take everything else anyway." I didn't tell anyone I was coming home for the holidays. I just showed up late in the afternoon, carrying a few presents in a canvas bag and the emerald box in my hand. Everyone was gathered in the living room. Sophie was on the rug with her legs crossed, wearing a new pair of designer boots, ones I had seen last month on a shipping confirmation email that was supposed to be for me. I recognized the brand instantly. Mom greeted me like nothing had happened. "Rachel, look who finally decided to show up," she said, half laughing. "We didn't think you'd make it." I smiled and said nothing. I handed out the usual gifts, nothing extravagant. Some handmade soap for Grandma, a coffee mug for Dad, a small bottle of perfume for Mom. Then I walked over to Sophie and placed the velvet box in her lap. She looked down at it like it was treasure. "What's this?" she asked, eyebrows raised. I just said, "It's for you. Read the tag." She turned the card over. "To Sophie. Karma." She gave a confused laugh and untied the ribbon slowly, trying not to damage the bow. She opened the lid and stared inside. At first, she didn't say anything, just blinked a few times. Then she pulled out the card. Her face changed when she read it. She looked up at me, confused and offended all at once. "What's this supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The room went silent. You could hear the fireplace crackling. Dad paused halfway through a bite of pie. Mom was sitting upright now, her smile frozen in place. Sophie looked back at the box like she was expecting something to appear. "Seriously, what kind of joke is this?" "You take everything else anyway," I said calmly. "Just figured I'd save you the trouble this year." Mom stood up. "Rachel, that's enough." "Enough of what?" I asked. "Enough of pretending like I haven't watched every gift meant for me end up in her room? Enough of asking nicely only to be called materialistic? Or enough of finally saying something out loud after years of being told I'm imagining it?" Sophie's mouth opened like she was going to respond, but she didn't. She just sat there, still holding the card in one hand and the empty box in the other. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. Mom looked like she was trying to hold herself back. "That's not the time or the place," she said through her teeth. When is the time? I asked. When you're denying it. When you're telling me I'm selfish for wanting to keep the gifts people sent me. When Sophie's posting my things online, while you say I don't appreciate them enough. Nobody spoke. I stood there for a few seconds longer, then grabbed my coat from the armrest. I just wanted to stop pretending. That's all. I walked out without saying goodbye. By the time I got back to DC, my phone was already blowing up. Missed calls from Mom. A string of texts from Sophie. What the hell was that? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. If you're jealous, just say that. Then one final message. You're sick. The next day, Mom sent a long text. It was half guilt, half reprimand. She said I ruined the holiday, said I made Sophie cry, said I was spiteful and petty, and that I had weaponized Christmas. Then she wrote, "You used to be kind, Rachel. What happened to you?" I didn't respond. Not yet. I still have the photo in my head, Sophie sitting there with the empty box in her lap, her mouth twisted in disbelief, realizing for the first time that I wasn't playing along anymore. I didn't respond to any of the texts right away. I needed time to breathe, to come down from the sheer emotional weight of everything that had just unfolded in that living room. But I knew it wasn't over. Not in my family. 3 days after Christmas, I got added back to the family group chat, a place I'd quietly muted years ago. The message was from my mom. It was long, dramatic, and full of vague moral superiority. She wrote that she was deeply disappointed in my behavior, said I had publicly humiliated my sister, and ruined what was supposed to be a joyful and peaceful gathering. She claimed I had been cruel and unprovoked, and accused me of turning a beautiful holiday into a bitter spectacle. There were no questions, no attempts to understand, just a carefully worded rebuke sent to every aunt, uncle, cousin, and grandparent in the group. My sister didn't say anything in the chat. She didn't have to. The message was doing all the work for her. Most people didn't respond. That's the thing about families like mine. Silence is how they protect the image. If you don't comment, you can pretend you didn't take sides. You can keep the peace by saying nothing at all. But then something unexpected happened. Brian, one of my cousins, second cousin technically, but we grew up going to the same barbecues, the same Easter egg hunts, responded. He kept it short, only 2 sentences, but it hit like a lightning bolt. Wait, was that the leather wallet I sent Rachel for her graduation? Because I remember it being lost in the mail, and then seeing Sophie post a picture with one just like it. The group chat went completely still. Then a few people dropped those polite, neutral emojis. One of my uncles said, "Let's not get into drama," followed by a, "We should be lifting each other up, not tearing each other down." But the conversation had already shifted. The illusion had cracked. Brian didn't say anything else, but the implication was clear. I wasn't the only one who noticed. I wasn't the only one who'd seen something off but had been too polite to question it. His message wasn't an attack. It was a quiet confirmation that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy. I didn't respond in the chat. I didn't need to. Brian's words were louder than anything I could have said. The rest of the family went back to their routines. Happy New Year posts, pictures of snow-covered porches, recipes. But something had shifted. That velvet box, that one note, had done what years of asking nicely couldn't. Now someone else had seen it. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee. After the fallout from Christmas, something changed in me. It was like a thread had finally snapped. I stopped trying to explain. I stopped hoping they'd acknowledge what was happening. And instead, I started documenting. I made a folder on my laptop. I called it Gifts Sophie. At first, it was just a few screenshots, Instagram posts where Sophie showed off gifts I never received. A watch here, a makeup palette there. Then I started digging. I pulled up old email receipts from things I'd either ordered for myself or that others had told me they sent my way. I matched them to Sophie's social media timeline like a puzzle. The green satchel my friend Aaron mailed me for my birthday 2 years ago? Sophie had it in a #Sunday outfit post 3 weeks later. A skincare fridge from a former roommate? Sitting in the background of one of Sophie's GRWM TikToks. And then I saw the perfume set. It was a $450 niche perfume set I had splurged on for myself last year. A gift to me, from me, during a rough time when I felt like I was losing my grip on everything. I had it shipped to my parents' house because I was between apartments at the time. I asked my mom if it arrived. She said no. Claimed it must have gotten lost or stolen from the porch. There it was, 3 distinctive rectangular bottles in a black velvet case. On Sophie's Instagram story, wrapped in a gold ribbon, captioned, "So excited to gift this at our corporate holiday exchange. Luxury smells for a luxury team, #gifted with love." I sat there staring at the screen, jaw clenched, feeling like the walls had closed in. That was it. That was the moment it stopped being a quiet theft. She wasn't just taking my things. She was profiting off them. Selling the image of generosity built on items that didn't belong to her. It was no longer passive. It was intentional. And it was professional fraud. Sophie had been building a small influencer presence, mostly in beauty and skincare. She had partnerships with mid-tier cosmetics brands, a few affiliate codes, PR packages. The whole clean girl aesthetic thing. I knew because I watched quietly from the sidelines, not out of interest, but because her world kept brushing against mine, taking pieces as it passed. I gathered everything. Screenshots, receipts, timestamps, a comparison grid showing dates of gifts sent to me and the corresponding posts where they appeared under her name. I even included a screenshot of the perfume receipt with the shipping address, my name, the exact SKU, and then the story where she claimed she bought it for the office exchange. I didn't say anything publicly. I didn't out her online. I chose one of the brands she'd been tagging, an indie cosmetics label I actually liked. I looked up their PR manager, packaged the evidence neatly, and sent a short, professional message explaining that a content creator they were working with had repeatedly posted and re-gifted items that had been stolen from someone else. I didn't expect anything to come of it. I just needed to do it. Needed to stop being quiet. 3 weeks later, Sophie posted a vague story, taking a little break from content. Socials have been so draining lately. A day after that, I got a message, anonymous but clearly from someone at the brand, thanking me for the detailed documentation. They said they had terminated their contract with Sophie after an internal audit revealed inconsistencies in her promotional claims and sourcing. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it. I didn't say a word. But I knew Sophie had found out. She texted me a single sentence, "You're seriously disturbed." Then came the spiral. On social media, she started making passive-aggressive posts about fake friends and jealous haters, and how some people will do anything to tear down others just to feel powerful. A few of her followers left supportive comments. A few asked what happened to her brand partnership. She ignored them all. She blamed the algorithm. She blamed trolls. She blamed people who can't stand to see others shine. She blamed everyone but herself. And I sat there, watching the whole thing unfold, knowing exactly what she was doing, because I'd spent my whole life being the person she never had to say thank you to. The person who got erased, rebranded, and handed over in silence. Not this time. A few months after the perfume incident and the fallout from Sophie's lost brand deal, my mom reached out with what sounded like a peace offering. She said she needed help cleaning out the garage and was willing to pay me for my time. Nothing sentimental, nothing about making amends. Just 3 hours, $20 an hour, no extensions, all clearly outlined in a text message. It sounded transactional, which was fine by me. I wasn't in the mood for heart-to-hearts. I just wanted the money and to be done. I showed up wearing old jeans and gloves, prepared to sort through dusty boxes of forgotten Christmas decorations and broken furniture. The garage smelled like stale wood and motor oil, and the light flickered every time I stepped near the back shelves. About an hour in, I opened a plastic bin marked crafts and immediately froze. Sitting on top was the scarf from my 28th birthday, a soft cashmere blend in deep burgundy with a floral pattern along the edges. My friend Lily had it custom woven from a small shop in Oregon. She sent it to my parents' address with a tracking number, and I never saw it. My mom had said it must have gotten lost in transit. Underneath the scarf was a diary with my initials embroidered in gold thread. I remembered this one vividly. It was a gift from my college roommate. She'd worked with a local bookbinder to personalize it. It even had a message written on the first page. I never got it. My mom told me the package had been stolen off the porch. Then I found a carefully wrapped set of handmade soap, 12 small bars in a wooden box, each a different scent. I remembered the receipt in my inbox. It had cost the sender over $80. My mom had once said it smelled like something spilled inside, and that she had to throw it away. But there it all was, intact, unopened, stashed behind a bin of tangled Christmas lights. I pulled out each item slowly, like I was handling bones from an excavation. It wasn't just about the things. It was about the lies layered on top of them. Then I saw the small velvet box wedged between 2 old board games. I opened it and almost dropped it. Inside were my grandmother's earrings, delicate, vintage gold with tiny ruby inlays. Linda, my mother, had cried when she said they were lost in the flood 5 years ago. Everything in that old jewelry box was ruined, she told me once, wiping away a tear. Those earrings, they're just memories now. Sophie had worn what she claimed were replicas to last year's holiday dinner. Said she had them made in honor of Grandma. Everyone complimented her for being so sentimental. But the ones I held in my hands now weren't copies. They were the originals. I knew them. The clasp had that slight bend. One of the rubies had a tiny nick on the edge. These were real. I stood up, holding the box, my throat dry. And that's when Sophie walked into the garage. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me, then at the diary in my hand. "I need that," she said flatly, walking toward me. "That's mine." "No, it's not," I said. My voice wasn't raised, but I didn't move. She tried to brush past me to take it. I stepped back. "It was a gift to me. You never even knew it existed until now." "You're being dramatic," she snapped, reaching again. I held it tighter. "It has my initials stitched into it, Sophie. You didn't even bother to unpick them. You don't even use journals. You just hoard them." That's when it hit me. It wasn't about wanting the diary. It was about not wanting me to have it. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just put the diary in my bag and zipped it closed. She stood there, fists at her sides, breathing hard like I'd just stolen from her. I said, "You've taken everything else. You're not getting this." And I walked out. My mom didn't say anything. She was inside, probably pretending not to hear. But when I got home, I opened that diary and read the message on the first page. To Rachel. "For all the stories you haven't told yet." Well, I'm telling them now. I joined a women's community group in my neighborhood a few months ago. Nothing formal, just a casual meetup every couple of weeks in a local rec center or someone's backyard. Some women were retired, some ran small businesses, others were like me, just trying to find their footing. I wasn't sure what I was looking for when I started attending, but I knew I needed to be around people who didn't already have a script written about who I was supposed to be. One night, they had an open floor session, just people talking about their lives. It was relaxed, no pressure. But when it got quiet, something in me shifted. I don't know what it was exactly, maybe just the way no one interrupted each other, or maybe I just reached a point where I couldn't carry the silence anymore. So I told them. I told them about the gift, about the velvet box, about the garage. I told them how Sophie had used my things to build a brand. I gave examples, listed receipts, showed screenshot. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't try to make it dramatic. I just laid it out plainly, fact by fact, object by object. They listened. No one looked away. No one told me I was being too much. At the end, there was this silence, not awkward, just heavy. And then someone across the room said, "That's theft." Another woman, older, added, "That's emotional abuse." And one by one, they started validating things I had spent years trying to make sense of alone. One woman, Diane, leaned forward and said something I wasn't expecting. "Wait, Rachel L., right? You had that graphic design portfolio in high school, pink and gray theme with the hand-drawn cover." I nodded, stunned. She looked at me with wide eyes. "My daughter went to school with Sophie. That portfolio showed up at a college showcase under Sophie's name. We always thought something was off about it, but nobody questioned it." I sat there frozen, everything around me blurry except for the sound of my own breath. That project had been my senior capstone. I thought I lost it in the mail when I submitted it to an out-of-state art program. My mom said the envelope had never arrived. Now I knew it never even left the house. After that night, things started moving faster. I started receiving packages again. But this time, they were addressed to the Sophie brand. Boxes of cosmetics, promotional hoodies, health snacks, press kit. Everything was addressed to Sophie, but sent to my address. I recognized the logos from influencer posts. She was still using my apartment, the one she had never visited, as her shipping destination. Maybe she thought I wouldn't say anything. Maybe she didn't care. But this time, I did something. I emailed the companies. One by one, I contacted their press departments and explained that their packages were being sent to my home under someone else's name and brand. I attached images, documented the packaging, included my ID and rental agreement to show it was my residence. I didn't demand anything. I just told the truth. One brand got back to me within hours. They said they were already investigating Sophie. Apparently, mine wasn't the first time her name had come up in a complaint. They thanked me for the documentation and told me they had already suspended her affiliate code, pending an internal review. I forwarded the rest of the brands the same information. I didn't hear back from all of them, but I didn't need to. What mattered was that for the first time, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't brushing things off or pretending they didn't matter. I wasn't letting her wear my skin anymore. And I wasn't alone. Diane texted me a few days later and offered to put me in touch with her daughter, the one who'd seen the portfolio all those years ago. Another woman in the group gave me the number of someone who worked in intellectual property law. I hadn't even asked. It was the first time I felt like my voice had weight. Not because I was shouting, but because I finally stopped whispering. After everything I'd uncovered, the missing gifts, the stolen student work, the packages arriving at my door, the false branding, it felt like I was holding 100 threads in my hands, each one leading back to the same person. I realized that there was nothing left to explain, nothing left to wonder about. All that remained was to put the truth in one place and send it where it needed to go. I prepared the envelope like I was building a case, because that's what it was. Inside, I included photos of Sophie using my belongings in her posts. I added side-by-side comparisons of the items as they appeared on her Instagram and the original receipts showing they were sent to me. I included shipping confirmations, some with my name and address clearly visible, others with handwritten notes from the senders, people who thought they were reaching me, not her. There were screenshots of the student portfolio she had claimed as hers. A printed version of the email from the cosmetics brand confirming the investigation. A list of brands that had sent packages to my home under her name. A spreadsheet detailing every incident. My ID. My lease. My proof. I mailed the packet to the headquarters of the company she was most closely associated with, a big beauty brand that had built an entire influencer campaign around her carefully curated image. And then I waited. It didn't take long. Within 2 weeks, Sophie's page went dark. First, her affiliate links stopped working. Then posts began to disappear one by one. No announcement. No final story. Just silence. Then nothing. The account was gone. Someone in the women's group forwarded me a screenshot of a warning letter that had circulated online in a private creator forum. It didn't name her directly, but it referenced a termination due to verified misuse of gifted and sponsored materials and fraudulent representation. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. It wasn't satisfying in the way people expect justice to be. It was just quiet. A long exhale. A space that had once been filled with noise finally gone still. But it wasn't over yet. A few days later, Linda showed up at my office. She walked right into the lobby, loud enough that 2 co-workers turned to look. Her voice was sharp, and her coat was still half-buttoned, like she hadn't stopped moving since storming out of the car. I didn't see her until I stepped out of the elevator and found her standing by the front desk. "You need to stop," she said before I could speak. "You've done enough. You've ruined Sophie's life." The receptionist looked at me, eyes wide, unsure what to do. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just said, "You shouldn't be here." Her eyes narrowed. "She's your sister." "No," I said quietly. "She's your project. And I'm done being part of it." I walked past her, into the stairwell, and left her standing there in the lobby with nothing else to say. That night, I wrote a letter. I didn't yell in it. I didn't list everything she had done. I didn't try to change her mind. I just wrote, "You no longer have access to my life." And I meant it. I blocked her number. I blocked her email. I removed her from everything, social media, emergency contacts, all of it. Not out of hate. Out of necessity. I had spent years being erased in quiet, subtle ways. Now I was drawing the line. This year, I decided to celebrate my birthday in a way I never had before, not by waiting for anyone else to recognize it, not by hoping things might change, but by doing something that felt honest and real. I invited 6 people. Not family. Not people with obligations. Just friends who had stayed, listened, and supported me over the past few years without asking me to shrink or apologize. We met at my place. I didn't want anything extravagant. Just candles, soft music, simple food, and time together. Before dinner, I handed out small bags to each of them. Inside was a monogrammed mug, a photo frame with a picture of us from a day that meant something, and a lavender candle I had picked out myself. Each one was chosen with care. Nothing mass-produced, nothing generic. Just quiet reminders that I had seen them, and they had seen me. We ate. We laughed. Someone spilled wine on the tablecloth. Someone else dropped a piece of cake on the rug. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. It was whole. It was mine. And at the end, there was one last gift left on the table. Wrapped in plain brown paper, no ribbon, no tag. I opened it slowly, not knowing what to expect. Inside was a framed photo. I recognized it instantly. Me at 9 years old, standing in my grandmother's living room, holding the pink camera with both hands like it was treasure. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes wide, caught in that one brief moment before it was taken from me. Beneath the photo was a small folded card. It read, "She deserved more." So did I. I didn't cry. I just sat with it, letting the moment be what it was. Because this year, no one else got to rewrite the story. I did. There were still 3 boxes left in my closet. Things I'd gathered over the years, Things that were supposed to be mine but never really felt like they belonged to me. Scarves with tags still on them. Notebooks I never wrote in. Gift sets in unopened packaging. Items that had been stolen, misplaced, redirected, and eventually returned to my hands, not with apologies but with silence. I donated them. 3 boxes, carried down 2 flights of stairs and packed into the trunk of my car. I took them to a local charity that supports women starting over after domestic violence and housing insecurity. I didn't leave a note. I didn't attach a story. I just gave them what I had once been denied: ownership, a chance to have something of value, and to decide for themselves what to do with it. 1 box stayed behind. It sat on the top shelf of my closet, smaller than the others, sealed and labeled in black marker with one word: closure. I didn't open it. Not because I was afraid, not because I needed to know what was inside, but because I didn't. I didn't need answers anymore. I didn't need explanations or confrontations. I didn't need to win or prove anything. I had already done what I came to do. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. This was what it looked like to stop giving away space to people who never earned it. It was quiet. But it was right.